Hi everyone! Before I get into the topic here, I just want to take a minute and thank you for clicking on this video and watching. If you like this type of content, hit the like button and also hit the subscribe button. If you're interested in working with me, you can visit the description section and click on the link to my website, which is livingfreehealing.us. And if you're looking for daily support, you can follow me over at Instagram at livingfreefindinglove. Today we are talking about the myth about following your heart. How our intuition can actually lead us astray if we have had trauma in our past. If you have been out in the world, you've probably heard people saying, follow your heart when it comes to love. You'll know when you know, stuff like that. And so if you've been following that advice and going with your feelings, and even if you hadn't heard that advice, you're probably just naturally following your heart, and you've ended up in toxic relationships, you might be wondering, maybe that advice isn't the best. Maybe actually I can't follow my heart. And if I can't follow my heart, what do I follow? How do I know if someone's right for me if I can't trust my feelings? This is something that I faced myself when coming out of toxic relationships. I had this epiphany, like, oh my gosh, my heart has led me to terrible relationships. Perhaps this is not what I should be following. This is not the guidance system that I need to be going by. So today I'm going to talk about why that is and what you can follow instead. This makes it much easier. It took me a while to figure this out. I'm hoping it will not take you guys so long by watching this live today. I've talked about this in a lot of previous trainings, but there is something about the trauma that we've experienced in childhood that draws us to experience it again in adulthood. So if we have had these difficult experiences when we were growing up, maybe we had a difficult mom, we had a difficult dad, maybe if we had another caregiver, there was some abuse there. If we've had those experiences, that essentially to us feels normal. It feels like home. And so we grow up and we walk out into the world and we have this like blueprint of what love and relationships are. And again, if we've had that trauma, that blueprint includes maybe abuse or neglect or just emotional unavailability. And so we walk into the world with this blueprint of love in our hearts. And if we follow our hearts, it's actually going to lead us to more people who are emotionally unavailable or who neglect us or who even abuse us. So this is where it can get so confusing because I've talked about this before with my own experience. That force, that pull, that heart feeling can feel so compelling. And it can really make us feel like a person who isn't treating us well is actually the love of our life. Let me know if you guys have experienced this. Let me know in the comments if this has been your experience. If you have followed your heart and your heart has led you to not being treated well or being abused or taken advantage of, whatever the case may be, I'm curious to what you guys experienced here. So here's the thing about following your heart. I'm actually huge on following your heart in any other area. So I often provide guidance for people, like I do spiritual guidance in addition to this work that I do here on relationships and love. And I am always telling people, like, that's what you do. You follow your heart, except in this area. This is the one area where I say, actually, if and only if you have had certain traumatic experiences when it comes to love and relationships, you don't want to follow your heart. The reason why we are being drawn into these toxic relationships is because they are familiar to us. They feel like home. And if you want to learn more about that dynamic, you can check out some of my other trainings. I don't want to go too deep into it here today because I want to make sure that I'm making it very clear on what you can follow instead. So we're going to talk about that soon. But this advice that I'm saying, like don't follow your heart, this does not apply to you if you had healthy relationships or like you went through childhood and had relatively little trauma. So this is my disclaimer here. If you had good relationships, that your relationships were healthy, you felt loved, you felt respected, following your heart will probably be a good strategy, because your heart, your intuition will lead you to people whom feel familiar to you. And if your home environment when you were younger was happy and healthy, that's a great system to go by. So everything that I'm sharing here today is only meant for people who that wasn't their experience, who maybe, again, had some difficult experiences in childhood, which skewed what their internal definition of love is. And for everything that I'm saying here, I never want any of you to blame yourselves for this, because sometimes there's a tendency when you start to notice these patterns in your life, there can be a tendency sometimes to go like, ugh, I did it again. Look, maybe I'm just not smart enough, or like I should have known better. No. You can't help what you were born into. You can't help the family that you were born into. It's not your fault that you experienced these difficult things in childhood and therefore then had difficult relationships in adulthood. Not your fault, so don't blame yourself here. What we can do now that we're adults, now that we have agency, is we can make different choices. We can learn all about these dynamics, about what's actually driving our intuition when it comes to love and relationships, and we can choose differently. So again, the main reason that our heart pulls us towards toxic relationships is because it's familiar. There can be other dynamics going on, like the ego, the inner child, wants to subconsciously recreate those dynamics in order to change the story, to have like love win out, to finally get that love that you were missing when you were a child. There's lots of forces at play here that can make us feel like a toxic relationship is the right decision for us. This happened to me at least a couple times where I just was following my heart and it led me into really bad relationships. And I stayed there for a while because, again, I thought that this was the right relationship. My intuition, my feelings, or we can say my heart was saying, this is it. This is the right person, because it felt familiar and it felt right. And so it's very confusing because, again, I am always going to promote following your heart when it comes to all other areas of your life, because usually it is a good intuitive guidance system. Again, except here in this very specific case, when you have had trauma in your past or difficult relationships, that's when I caution you against following your heart. What I don't want to promote here is the idea that like we don't want to have any feelings for people. No, absolutely not. But what I'm talking about here is the difference between following our heart blindly versus having feelings for someone, but maybe it's not that big, intense pull like it is with some of the toxic relationships, but there's still feelings there. All hope is not lost for feeling love for your partner. It just feels different. What do we do instead? How do we know if someone is right for us if we can't follow our heart, if we can't follow our intuition? So before I talk about this, I want to share my experience. So I had this same question. Like, I had started to realize that my heart was leading me towards not so great relationships, and I really struggled with figuring out, well, then what do I use to tell? How do I know if I actually really like this person? How do I know if they're right for me? I was quite confused for a bit. So I did a lot of research on how to find a healthy relationship, how to know if someone is right for you. I talked to mentors, I got support. And so everything that I'm sharing with you today is a compilation of what I've learned that got me to this place where I now have a healthy partner and he's great. And like I'm happy as a clam. So one of the things we can do if we're not going to go by our intuition to figure out if someone is right for us is we can use objective measures. Now, I know when I say this, it can kind of feel like maybe I'm taking the fun out of love, or it's like becoming like a science experiment. Not so much. With all of these things that I'm going to talk about, they're still going to be fun. Like, you're still going to enjoy the experience. It's just very different from going blindly by your feelings or your intuition. So, what are some objective things we can look at? Does this person that we're dating exhibit healthy relationship behaviors? So what might that be? Do they know how to fight fairly without being aggressive, without calling names, things like this? Are they able to apologize? Do they have that capacity? Do they have that capacity to say, oh, you know what? Yeah, I really messed up here. I apologize. I won't do that again. Can they take accountability? Are they sensitive to your feelings? When you share this thing, something that happened hurt my feelings, do they then apologize and act differently? Are they sensitive to how you feel? Do they compromise with you? Meaning, we don't want a relationship where it's like always one person's way or always the other person's way. Are they working together with you to make sure both of you are feeling good and comfortable in that relationship? Compromise. Are they empathetic? Can they understand when you share your feelings, where you're coming from? Maybe they haven't been through it specifically themselves, but they at least try to understand. They ask questions. They attempt to get to know your point of view, even if they don't totally agree with it. They try. You feel like your feelings are important. Are they honest? When they're communicating with you, does it seem like they're being truthful with you and they're being honest about their feelings? Do they respect your boundaries? That's a huge one. When you share, I don't feel comfortable doing this. Do they push you on that? Or do they say, okay, I understand, great, we'll do something different? Or if they're not okay with that, they try again to compromise to figure out a way where you do feel okay and both of you are still getting your needs met. Do they communicate with you? If you guys have been in toxic relationships, you probably know how brutal the silent treatment is. So does this person communicate with you in a healthy way? So you understand where they're coming from and how they're feeling, and you're not left in the dark. So these are some of the objective measures we can look at. And if you're a client that works with me in my 12-week program, I give you a very specific outline of the things that you want to look for in a partner. Again, these are objective measures that we can use instead of just going by our feelings and our intuition. So I see Carol here saying it's hard to find that out until several months in. Yes, Carol, this is absolutely true. So this is again why I always advise people to go slow. When you've had toxic relationships, when you've had a history of ending up in abusive relationships or emotionally neglectful relationships, take it slow and make sure you're giving the relationship time to reveal itself, meaning for your partner to really show who they are. Because anyone can show up great for a couple days. Like that's easy. Long term though, that's when you really get to know somebody and see who they truly are. And yeah, like Carol said, sometimes it does take a couple months. Which is again why I do caution people, if they've had difficult relationships in the past, to also wait a while until you get engaged or married. Like some people recommend waiting at least a year. I say a little bit more, again, if you've had this history of pairing up with someone who wasn't healthy for you, because you do want to give it time. You want to give that person time to show who they truly are over the long term. In addition to using objective measures, like are they exhibiting healthy relationship behaviors, we can also go by how we feel. And by how we feel, I'm not talking about following our heart, I'm not talking about following our intuition, but we can pay very close attention to how we're feeling when we're with this person. So what do I mean by that? Do I feel like I'm at my best in this relationship? I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but when I was in toxic relationships, I did not feel like I was my best. Maybe I did feel like this was the one for me or that this was the right person for me, but if you'd asked me, really, am I happy in this relationship? I don't think I could have said yes. I might have thought that I was, in my mind because I was in love, but these relationships were not bringing out the best in me. I actually felt they were bringing out the worst in me. So a way you can tell if this is the right relationship for you is if you feel like your best self when you're with this person. Are you truly happy when you're with this person? Not just like the happiness of infatuation or like, oh my God, I'm so attracted to this person, but like, does your overall life feel good? Are you happy on a day-to-day basis in this relationship over the long term? Again, anyone can make you happy for, like a night or a couple days, but over the long term, are you truly happy and satisfied in this relationship or hanging out with this partner? That's another way you can tell. Another way you can tell is, do I feel safe in this relationship? Do I feel like this is a warm spot to come home to? Not the feeling of home that this toxic partner might elicit in you that feels familiar, but do I actually feel like this is a safe place where I feel supported and I can rest? Because I talk about this a lot. We don't want to go for the relationship that is the most exciting and stimulating, because you guys, like, the world out there is exciting and stimulating enough. There's enough drama going on. There's so much going on out there in the world that what we want to look for in our relationships is a place to rest, a place to feel rejuvenated, a place to feel like refueled almost. And so that's another way you can tell if you're in the right relationship. Do I feel like this is a safe place for my heart? The shift here is going from just going by following our heart and our intuition. Those are feelings, but now we're shifting over to more objective feelings. Another one is, do I feel supported? Does my partner lift me up? Do they encourage me? Are they proud of the things that I'm doing in my life? Do they support me? Or does it feel like they don't really care? Or they're just like even kind of criticizing me for the things I'm doing? If you feel supported, that's a great indicator that this is the right person for you. So another one is, am I anxious all the time? In a toxic relationship, you're frequently going to feel anxious, and that's an indication that this isn't the right relationship. We often associate that with the feeling of butterflies, right? Like in all my toxic relationships, I had so many butterflies, when in reality, actually, I had a lot of anxiousness in those relationships. I didn't feel like I was in a place where I could relax and let my guard down and truly be accepted for who I was. So another feeling sign that you're in the wrong relationship is if you're feeling frequently anxious or unsettled, or like you really don't know what's going on. So we can actually pay attention to our feelings, like I said, but again, in a slightly different way, not just going by that, where is my heart leading me? So one other thing here, one other feeling that you can pay attention to is, do I feel like this partner cares about my emotions? There's a very distinct difference. Now that I'm in a healthy relationship versus those toxic relationships, there's a very different tone to a relationship where someone actually does care about your feelings. I didn't realize what that was like until I had it, but pay close attention. If it feels like the person you're with doesn't care about your feelings or isn't really interested in making you happy, not that the main goal of a partner should be to make you happy, but if they don't care at all about pleasing you, that's a red flag. And so we want to look for someone who it feels like they really do care about how we feel, and they do want to make us happy. Because I'm sure all of you also care about the people you're with, and you do want to make them happy. Again, not that it's your sole pursuit, but it's part of the relationship dynamic. It's part of what you bring to the table in your relationships. Because this is the main shift we do have to make. And again, I caution going to the place where you're taking in this information and saying, oh great, so I'm not going to feel any love for my partner. No, that's not what I'm saying here. It's when you're in a healthy relationship, you will feel love for your partner. And if you're not feeling any feelings at all, then I would say that this is not the right relationship for you either. But the feelings in a healthy relationship, they're just different than a toxic relationship. In my case, they're less dramatic, I want to say. They're less intense. But in a healthy relationship, they're also deeper. They feel like, because I am now emotionally available and my partner is emotionally available as well, we can now go deeper. And so it's just a very different tone of feelings Whereas I thought like that toxic love, that was like the be all end all. But now my experience is different. I see that there's this whole other way that I can experience love and relationships, and it's honestly so much better. Again, it's deeper and it's so much more healing and soothing than that toxic roller coaster love where you're always like chasing the high. And yeah, like it's fun for a little while, but it's also exhausting. See here, I see a comment from Rocio. How can I just lost it. How can I see the difference between I'm the one who's anxious when I meet a new person and when the energy of the other person is making me feel anxious? That is a great question. So, Rocio, I think the only way that you can tell here is to continue to see this person. Because everyone is pretty nervous on a first date. And so, yeah, it's really hard to tell in the first couple meetings. So if this is someone who you've had a first date with and you're like, okay, there could be something here, I'm not sure, I would recommend continuing to see them. And as you get more comfortable with them, if they're showing up in a healthy way, then that anxiety will naturally start to decrease. You'll feel more comfortable, you'll feel safer as you get to know this person. If it doesn't over time, maybe you feel a little bit more comfortable in the beginning, but then they do something and then the anxiety shoots up again, or they go distant and your anxiety is shooting back up, then that's how you can tease that out. A person like that would not be someone who you'd want to be with long term. So that's really the key difference here. If in seeing them continually, the anxiety decreases versus if it stays the same or even increases, that's a way to tell. Oh yeah, Cassie's saying, I definitely have strong feelings for my healthy partner. Yes, they've grown over time as opposed to the intensity that shows up immediately in toxic relationships. Exactly, Cassie. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. And thank you for sharing your experience. That's what it's been like for me too. It's like what I call the slow burn versus that firework in the very beginning of a toxic relationship. It deepens and it grows over time. Versus a toxic relationship, it's like really intense in the beginning, but then it is like a firework. It's just there and then it's gone. Lisa is saying, I felt somewhat safe. I think it was actually the familiarity with my abusive childhood. Yeah, Lisa, I'm glad you brought that up, because this is where it can be deceiving here. Because if you are in a relationship that feels familiar, yeah, there is this weird sense of safety and comfort on the surface. But if you dig a little bit deep down, if you've done some healing work, it will start to emerge that, yeah, actually this relationship isn't safe. But yeah, that's a great point. A toxic relationship can initially appear to be safe. And you're saying that here. But after a couple months, I lived in hell every day for 2 years. I'm so sorry. He was a sociopath and it was exhausting. I want to feel safe and at peace again. Yes. My new partner is very kind to me when I get anxious. I feel safe with him. Awesome. Okay. And I feel comfortable in sharing my feelings, but it's only 2 months. I don't know if he will turn toxic in the future. So yeah, Lisa, thank you for sharing this. And 2 months, it's still early, but these are great signs that this relationship could last long term. 2 months in, it's a decent amount of time. So yeah, continue to take your time here. Keep your eyes wide open. But yeah, it sounds like this is pretty good so far. But yes, continue to be careful and to be cautious. And I would not recommend someone like you who has just had a really brutal relationship to think about getting married very quickly. I would give it some time. Something that can be helpful if you are struggling with trying to figure out after a toxic relationship if this person is right for you is to get some support. This is something that I help my clients with in my 12-week program. And actually people have said to me, like, this is one of the most valuable parts of the program, was having that guidance from me as they were going on dates in real time. So like if someone talked to someone in a video chat and they were like, I don't know, what does this mean? Is this a good sign? Should I move forward? That's what I helped them with. I helped them figure out if there were objectively good signs here or if there were objectively red flags. Because again, sometimes we just don't see them because of our past history. If red flags were part of what we experienced as a child, then we're very likely to miss them in our relationships as we're adults, unless we've done the work, unless we've gotten support and made sure that we are going in eyes wide open. That's when we can shift this. But yeah, like I said, if you are really not sure about what you're doing here when it comes to dating and you want that support, reach out to me, send me a message. We can talk and see if my program is a good fit for you. That's just a part of what I do. The other part is the subconscious work, which is also super powerful. I've talked about that a lot in my other videos. So yeah, if you're interested in that, message me, or you can visit my website. It's livingfreehealing.us, and I share all the details about the work that I do. So you guys, in summary here, if you have had toxic relationships in your past, or if you've had trauma or difficult relationships with your caregivers as a child, the advice to follow your heart, or like you just know when you know, is actually going to lead you most likely in the wrong direction when it comes to finding love. And so what we need to do differently is look for the objective measures, make sure this person is showing up in a healthy way, as I talked about earlier, and we also can go by our objective feelings. How is this person making us feel in this relationship? Do we feel safe? Do we feel supported? Do we feel like we're the best version of ourselves when we're with this person? So you guys, I hope this was so helpful. Angela's saying thank you. You're so welcome. Lisa, oh, very helpful. Awesome. So glad that I can be here for you guys. Have a good day, you guys.